She was given the name Susan Alexandra Weaver when she was born on October 8, 1949. People already knew about her family. Many people knew her father, Pat Weaver, from TV. He made The Tonight Show and The Today Show. That changed TV for good. Elizabeth Inglis, her mother, was an actor who was in the 1935 movie The 39 Steps. She quit acting to raise her family, though. Sigourney also had famous family members. Comic Doodles Weaver was her uncle, and Steve Allen, the first host of The Tonight Show, was her godfather. She didn't feel like she fit even with everything going on. Both of her parents were working, so she often felt like no one was paying attention to her. She said she felt like a little girl in a big house who had no one to talk to. She wasn't the type to depend on how well her family did. She didn't try to become an actress. Instead, she went to Stanford to study English literature. She didn't do normal things in college. She lived in a tree house with her boyfriend, played the flute, and for fun, dressed up as elves. She played parts in school plays like Desire, but she didn't think it was fun to be an actor. After college, she went to Israel to work on a farm, which changed everything. She chose to apply to Yale School of Drama because she missed telling stories so much. Yale wasn't simple. She went to school with Meryl Streep, who always got the best parts, but Sigourney had to play old people. For someone in their early 20s, that was pretty rude. The teachers didn't trust her. Someone even told her, "You're not talented. You need to go." Instead of giving up, she made up her mind to show them they were wrong. However, when she was 14, something very important took place. Her name was changed. The name Sigourney came to her from The Great Gatsby, and she liked it better. By 6th grade, she was already 5 feet 11 inches, and she didn't think Susan would fit someone that tall. She changed her name to feel better because of the names people gave her, because of how tall she was. She used that unique name to help her get roles in Hollywood. Some casting directors were shocked when Sigourney showed up because they thought it was a man's name. That really made people notice her. When she met Christopher Durang, a fellow student who also felt like a stranger, things began to get better. They began making strange, experimental shows together. In the 1976 play Titanic, she played a woman who kept real animals inside her. That was weird, but it showed that she could be weird and emotional at the same time. After that, they made Das Lusitania Songspiel, a crazy play that made fun of war and business. In the movie, Sigourney played a sex worker who sang about money while breaking champagne bottles. Some people thought it was crazy, but Warren Beatty liked it and called it punk theater. For her last act at Yale, she didn't do a serious monologue. Instead, she did a piece about a woman seducing a fridge. She was let down by her teachers. She did, however, give the script to some agents in secret, which led to her first job off-Broadway. Before Alien, she was in some of New York's strangest plays. She and Durang kept working together, making plays more challenging than people thought they could be. They put a hedgehog puppet in Das Lusitania Songspiel to represent capitalism. In this version of Romeo and Juliet, the lovers yelled Marxist themes. She dressed up as the Titanic and sank while singing in one scene. It became a cult hit even though most reviewers didn't like it. When the famous director Mike Nichols saw her, he put her in a Broadway show. Her first movie part wasn't very interesting. That was all she did in Annie Hall, 1977. The only thing she did was stand next to Woody Allen in a trench coat and Diane Keaton. After that, she made a joke. "I made $50 and bought a sandwich with it." It was embarrassing, but it helped her in the end. Juliet Taylor, who was in charge of casting, remembered her and later suggested she be cast in Alien. It was even more amazing that the girl from Annie Hall could fight a monster in Alien because no one thought she would. Fans later began to play a game called Where's Sigourney? Going to Annie Hall to look for her. It was amusing. During her first big movie role, she did nothing but stand in the background. But soon, she wouldn't be there anymore. She was about to become one of the first big names in science fiction. Alien, Sigourney Weaver's part, changed sci-fi for good, but it almost didn't happen. The 1976 original story didn't say what gender the characters were, but male terms were used in early drafts. It wasn't thought that the star would be a woman. It was a big risk for director Ridley Scott and 20th Century Fox boss Alan Ladd Jr. to make Ripley a woman. Weaver wasn't well known as an actor until she was 29 years old. She wasn't even the first choice. The part went to Weaver instead of Meryl Streep or Glenn Close. No one had ever seen her play Ripley before. She wasn't weak. She wasn't ready to be saved. She was tough, smart, and knew how to stay alive. Hollywood didn't care about that, though. John Hurt, her co-star, made $250,000, but she only got $35,000. Fox didn't want her at first. They did not believe that a female action hero would work. Scott had to show them they were wrong. She trained with ex-Marines, which made her look strong and sure of herself when she was operating heavy machinery. It paid off to take the risk. People were shocked when Tom Skerritt, who played the male captain, died first. Ripley was an important part of the story. She was the last person left. No one thought Sigourney Weaver would get an Oscar nod for Aliens in 1987. Hollywood wasn't interested in sci-fi back then. The Academy mostly gave awards to dramas or romances that made people feel something, not to action pictures with aliens and explosions. But the way Weaver played Ellen Ripley was too strong to overlook. She wasn't like the other winners that year, who played women who were hurting or having personal problems. However, Ripley was unique. She was brave, smart, and strong. She led soldiers into war and fought off scary monsters, and kept a little girl safe. In action films, it's not often that someone shows both power and emotion at the same time. Weaver almost won the Oscar, but she didn't. It was won by Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God. She was the first deaf actor to win, which made history. A lot of people thought Weaver had been robbed because the Academy still didn't think science fiction was important. It was her selection that changed things, though. Fans thought that Weaver had paved the way for women to work in action films because Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for her role in Gravity. In 1989, after 2 years, Weaver did something that no one had ever done before. In one night, she won 2 Golden Globes, one for her role as real-life scientist Dian Fossey in Gorillas in the Mist, and one for nothing had ever been done before or since, but she won 2 performance awards in one night. These 2 parts made her look really good. In Gorillas in the Mist, she changed into Foss, a woman who lived her whole life to protect gorillas. Weaver lived with real gorillas for months to study Foss's behavior. It was hard to go through. When they were shooting in Rwanda, she got dysentery and wouldn't let a stunt double be used for dangerous scenes. In Working Girl, she played the exact opposite role, an egotistical, manipulative boss who takes credit from her helper. People in Hollywood thought she was channeling every bad boss they had ever had because she made the role so real. She showed she could do anything by getting those 2 awards in one night. But Weaver laughed about it later and said, "I think they got my name mixed up and checked it twice." She didn't want to keep playing the same part over and over, even after all her success. Hollywood kept giving her tough action parts after Aliens, but she turned them down. She didn't want to be boxed in. She turned down films like Total Recall and The Silence of the Lambs, which were both huge hits. She picked films instead that made her think in new ways. She won a BAFTA for her role as a quiet, unhappy mother in The Ice Storm. In Death and the Maiden, she played a woman who confronts the guy who tortured her. The part was dark and emotional. The director said it was like mental surgery because the part was so important. She made a difference even when she wasn't on TV. By lending her voice to Wally, she showed that she could fascinate people even when she wasn't there. But sci-fi always made her back up. She came back for Alien 3, but she made the rules. She insisted that Ripley's story have meaning and not just be a mindless repeat. She wanted the death of her character to mean something. But even so, Sigourney Weaver's time on Alien 3 was terrible. There was a completely different idea for the movie than what was shown on screen. At first, the story took place on a world with a wooden monastery where a group of monks lived alone. They thought that Ripley was a test from God, and when the xenomorph showed up, they thought it was their punishment for sinning. Fox agreed to make this version in 1990. It was written by Vincent Ward. A lot of scary religious images were in it. There were hand-carved wooden hallways, rites done by candlelight, and a slow-burning horror that mixed faith and fear. The company got rid of the whole plan 3 weeks before filming, though. The writing was thrown out, and the sets were only half built. The movie now had no plot. Fox was scared because test viewers didn't like the idea of Newt, the little girl from Aliens, dying in a scene that wasn't shown on screen. So, at the last minute, they changed the scene to a prison planet. It cost a lot of money and made a mess of the whole process. Later, Weaver said, "This is when Hollywood stopped taking chances and started making films just to make money." Fox hired David Fincher to direct this mess. He had never made a full-length movie before and was only 28 years old. Only music movies. From the beginning, the studio was in charge of everything he did. He had to fight with directors every morning just to get the scenes shot the way he wanted them. He was writing from a script that had been torn apart and written over and over again. One early draft by cyberpunk author William Gibson was about bioweapons used in the Cold War, and another by Near Dark author Eric Red was more scary. Nothing of that was left. A Prison Break script by Walter Hill was used in parts of the movie, but the spiritual and spooky parts of Ward's monastery script were taken out totally. The company always turned down Fincher's dark and unsettling style. He wanted the body of Newt to be shown before the credits so that Ripley's grief would feel real and hurt. Fox cut it though because they thought it was too sad. Some people on the team made fun of him, and one producer told him, "You could pee against a wall for 2 hours and call it Alien 3. It's still gonna make $30 million. Fincher was so mad at himself that he quit Hollywood for a while after making the movie. When he came back, he wouldn't let studios run his pictures, which is why he made films like Seven the way he wanted to. It was hard for Weaver too. The third Alien movie completely changed Ripley. She was in jail clothes and had a shaved head. She looked worn out from being exposed to radiation. Makeup artists put fake glue on her head to get this look, but it made her very sick with allergies. It hurt her skin, so they had to move to medical-grade glue, which still made filming take longer than planned. She fought even when she had to shave her head. Fincher wanted it to be real, but Fox wanted a wig because they didn't think the public would find her beautiful enough. Weaver said no. She later said that Ripley wasn't there to be liked. She was there to stay alive. Fox didn't like this. As a response, they took away her co-producer credit from early trailers and even used the phrase, "the bitch is back," to sell the movie. Weaver was very angry. They said it was rude and cheap. She worked hard to be a part of the movie. After Aliens, she was strong enough to demand that the writing be agreed upon. It would have been useless if she didn't die with Newt and Hicks when they were killed off by the studio. But writing it over and over again wore her out. She later said that the whole thing made her feel tired and hopeless. This also showed her how women were treated in Hollywood. The male leaders thought she was crazy for having creative ideas. The crew didn't like being told what to do by a woman. Because of it, she even thought about giving up acting. But she still stood up for Fincher despite everything. But she thought the movie was buried because of company interference. She saw what Fincher was trying to do as good. After the movie came out, Fincher himself didn't want anything to do with it. That's right, he said, "No one hates it more than me." He didn't want to be a part of Fox's 2003 release of a longer version of the movie that included 30 minutes of removed footage. His favorite part was when Ripley died. At first, she was meant to jump into molten lead as a sacrifice. But Fox made a change at the last second, which caused the xenomorph to burst out of her chest as she fell. Fincher thought it was stupid and pointless, and that it was just a way to copy the famous ending of Terminator 2. Weaver, on the other hand, has thoughts are still split. She knows there are problems with the movie, but she also thinks it was brave. She likes that Fincher didn't make it safe. It was very dangerous to kill Newt. Her sadness seemed more real because of it though. The movie has gained a cult audience over time. Some fans now like the book's ideas of body autonomy and corporate exploitation. It got more hate than it deserved, Weaver thinks. In Alien Resurrection 1997, Sigourney Weaver came back as Ripley, but she wasn't the same person. She played Ripley 8, a copy, who was no longer fully human. Her DNA was mixed with that of the xenomorphs, which gave her strange abilities. She was faster, stronger, and her blood was acidic. It was almost like she was one of the aliens, because she could feel them. The way Weaver moved was meant to show this. She didn't just walk. She crouched, followed, and looked right through people like a stalker. She even growled, "I'm the monster's mom." Ripley 8 wasn't only scary though, she was also lost. In one of the scariest parts of the movie, she found a lab full of failed clones of herself who were twisted, misshapen, and in pain. One of them begged her to kill it. She understood that she wasn't just a copy of Ripley, but something else. Some critics said the movie was too strange, but Weaver stood up for it. She told him that Ripley had changed. She wanted to learn more about this new side of herself. There was no plan for one of the movie's most famous scenes to go the way it did. Without looking, Ripley had to throw the ball over her shoulder and make the shot in one scene. The director wanted to use CGI to fake it, but Weaver said no. She trained with an NBA coach for weeks and worked on her skills. The team planned to spend the whole day trying to get the best take on the day of filming. Then she did it on her very first try. The whole cast and crew was shocked. Ron Perlman, who was in the scene, acted out of character, and yelled, "Holy shit." The scene had to be cut short because his reply wasn't in the script. It's still talked about. They said it was one of the biggest mistakes in movie history. Even Weaver made fun of me by saying, "I could have won a halftime show." While the movie was mostly CGI, this one real moment jumped out. Many people didn't like the movie at first, but as time went on, they came to love how crazy it was. It got really weird at times, like when a humanoid xenomorph with big creepy eyes showed up. A scientist talked to the aliens like they were his pets as well. And then there was Weaver, who was totally crazy. "Who do I have to fuck to get off this boat?" was one of her silly lines. She even licked Winona Ryder's face clean in one scene. She said later that she liked how strange everything was. The director had a strange idea, and she understood that. There were scenes that worked really well, like the underwater chase, where xenomorphs chased the team through halls that were flooded. It was very scary and powerful. The scene where the mixed alien is sucked out into space through a tiny hole, on the other hand, just didn't work. Some reviewers said it was one of the worst CGI scenes ever. Weaver said the movie had problems, but she wasn't sorry she made it. "It's not something strange, but it is something," she said. Weaver then made sure that Ripley's story would not be turned into a cheap action series. That's why she wouldn't be in Alien vs. Predator 2004 at all. She thought it was a silly idea. She said it was like making Jaws fight Godzilla. She already wanted Ripley to die in Alien 3 because she didn't want the character to come back just to make money. She was very angry when Fox chose to make AVP. Ripley's sacrifice seemed like it was being destroyed just to make a quick, stupid action movie, she thought. She even said that AVP ruined Ridley Scott's plans for a real third Alien movie. She never changed her mind over the years. It was important to her that Ripley be recognized as a real sci-fi hero and not just another action figure in a series. Ripley came back to life for Weaver even though she was done with films. She did this through video games. She did the role of Ripley again in Alien Isolation 2014, a game about Amanda, Ripley's daughter. The people who made the game asked her to record speech for a special mission where players could see scenes from the first Alien movie. She even got back together with the original group to make it seem more real. In contrast to later movies, this game was more about fear and staying alive than action. That made Weaver happy. She said this was the follow-up to Alien 3 that it should have been. Fans were shocked that she said yes because she had turned down so many other Alien projects. But this one was different for her. She said that games let Ripley live without the baggage of Hollywood. Weaver did something crazy when she was 61 years old. In Avatar, The Way of Water, she played a Na'vi girl who was 14 years old. There is no AI or magic here. She just acts. Cameron James wanted her to move like a real teen. She climbed, ran, and even pulled weird faces. She read her old notes from when she was a teenager and worked with coaches to get that energy back. No one knew who Kiri's dad was for 13 years. Some people thought he was a person. Some people thought it was a Na'vi fighter. Some even thought that Ava, Pandora's goddess, had something to do with it. Weaver made it her own. Kiri's link to nature was made up by her. One scene in which Kiri forms a bond with sea creatures wasn't in the plot, but Cameron loved it. They thought she was crazy to play a teen at age 61, but she proved them wrong. To make her look younger, the visual effects team used a lot of data. Everything else was real, though. After that, she turned bad in The Defenders. But not just anyone. Alexandra Reed didn't want to take over the world. She just wanted to stay alive. She had stolen parts to live for 500 years. People who wrote about Weaver were told to make her unique. Her wish for Alexandra was that she would be smart and strong without being flashy. The most scary thing she did? She made someone's tea sick, and it smelt like something from Shakespeare. Marvel didn't want her to die so quickly in the show, but she insisted. After that, letters that got out showed that Kevin Feige wished he had used her in Eternals. After 20 years, she went back to Broadway. In Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike, she played an actor who had lost her way. The part was a mess. She tripped over a rug one night and broke David Hyde Pierce's rib. Even though her costumes kept getting messed up, she did all of her own moves. She got caught in a wig net on stage one time. She was very wild, which people liked. She once went off script for 7 minutes, ranting about soap shows from the 1980s. The author of the play added it to the show. The budget almost fell apart because she insisted on real vodka on stage. The craziest thing she did a show in secret while she was sick with COVID-19. She later said that she just kept going by channeling Masha's crazy side. Weaver was able to make fun of her sci-fi past in Galaxy Quest. She played Gwen DeMarco, a figure who made fun of the silly parts women often got in space films. One scene where Gwen worries about the random death traps on the ship, Weaver's idea. She had the idea when she thought about how badly Alien 3 was put together. She made up a cue when she was running away from a rock monster, but it almost got the movie A grade. Behind the scenes, the scriptwriter used an earpiece to insult her, to make her mad like Ripley. People made fun of her outfit. She kept ripping her sleeves by mistake to make fun of how useless sci-fi clothes were. The strangest part? The "By Grabthar's hammer" chant came from an old Saturday Night Live skit about one of Weaver's failed Broadway shows. Weaver's 37-second appearance in Ghostbusters. Afterlife was more important than most people thought. It wasn't just for fun when she acted with Bill Murray. It looked like Dana Barrett was privately paying for the Ghostbusters to come back. It was even shown in Cut Conversation that she helped rebuild Phoebe's proton pack. She changed the line while it was being filmed to make it sound like Dana might have psychic abilities. She said no to the aging makeup because Dana had already survived Gozer. She deserves the lines on her face. What was the first plan? She was meant to fight Zol. She said Dana should be the one who keeps calm in all the chaos, but Weaver said no. In Hollywood, Sigourney Weaver and Jim Simpson have been married for 40 years, which is very long. In 1983, they met at a theater event where he was working as a barman. At the time, she was seeing someone else, but she later asked him to a party. He stayed to help clean up. They went on their first date because of that small moment. On October 1st, 1984, 3 months after that, they got married. It was a leap of faith, she said. Charlotte was their baby. She was born in 1990. Charlotte, also known as Char, is a professor at Columbia University who focuses on AI and digital stories. She is non-binary. Weaver had a hard time managing being a mother and her job. Char said that going to college was so hard that it almost killed her. Even though she was a big star, she decided to live a quiet life in New York. She went hiking and avoided the drama in Hollywood. Early in her work, Weaver had a lot of problems. Since she was 6 feet tall, she often didn't get parts because men were taller. She joked that she might paint shoes on her feet to make them look shorter. Even her daughter didn't care much about how famous she was. Someone brought up aliens, and Char just shrugged and said, "That's one of those things I don't need to know." Weaver has always been vocal about things that bother her. She works with the American Heart Association to make people more aware of heart disease and to remember women that it kills more people than all cancers put together. She also supports the right to have an abortion. In Call Jane, 2022, she played a woman who was part of an illegal abortion network. She said that the movie's message is more important than ever. After being in Gorillas in the Mist, she has also spent more than 30 years working for gorilla conservation. She has been in charge of the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund since 1988 and has won awards for her work. It wasn't always easy for her to take strong stands. Climate protesters stopped her play, The Tempest, in 2025. People in the crowd booed them, but Weaver backed them up, saying that their message fit with the theme of the play. Weaver hasn't gotten into a big fight about her pay in public, but she did help make action films more open to women. Her part as Ripley, an alien, showed that women could be in charge of big-budget films. Viola makes a lot more money than black actors. She says, "I get tenths of what they do." After Alien, especially with Avatar, Weaver made a lot more money. Initially, she was only paid $30,000. In Hollywood, she has also helped other women. For example, she backed the LGBTQ+ project Prayers for Bobby and worked with stars like Elizabeth Banks on Call Jane. Weaver has been a UN Goodwill ambassador for years, speaking out against climate change, cutting down trees and plastic waste. She also works to end the shame surrounding addiction and has fought for the rights of refugees. During COVID-19, she even let climate activists like Greta Thunberg meet in her New York flat. She was afraid of being arrested in 2015 when she spoke out against the Keystone XL project. As the saying goes, silence is consent. Weaver is an activist. It's not just something she says, it's who she is.